So there are two distinct types of Nespresso machines, the original line and the newer Vertuo line. They operate differently, different drink sizes, and the pods are totally different, and they only work with each individual line. So whatever you choose, you're going to be locked in. But I've used both these. We're going to talk about how different they are and which you should choose. So to start out how they work, the original machines are the original machines that Nespresso made, and they work like a traditional espresso machine. They have a 19-bar pump, which pushes a lot of pressure through the pods for a concentrated beverage like traditional espresso. And you can tell it's got high pressure because it brews in only 20 seconds, and the pump is a lot higher than a typical 9 bars you see on an espresso machine. You can see how the coffee will come in the bottom of the pod and then goes out the top, and this foil acts like a portafilter. Meanwhile, the Vertuo brews differently than pretty much any other coffee maker out there. So they have these circular pods, and when you put it into the machine puts the water into the center of the pod, and it actually spins it to brew the coffee. And that centrifugal force is what causes the coffee to extract and brew, and it comes out the sides and into your cup. It's a very unique system. So now let's compare how these taste. So I'm actually using the same coffee for each of these. This is the Starbucks Espresso Blonde Roast. I think something that anyone watching this video can relate to the flavor profile here, and we'll make one shot with each of these. Pod in the original machine, single espresso, cup for the Vertuo. So I got a coffee with each one. Pretty simple too. You can tell neither one is easier or more difficult than the other. A little bit larger crema on the Vertuo one. You can tell it's because that centrifusion system essentially blends the coffee in there. So when drinking the original, it's a more bitter shot. It's also a slightly lighter body. So this very much tastes like a darker roasted coffee. I mean, like a strong, darker roasted coffee that you might get from a Starbucks. Coincidence? Meanwhile, the Vertuo, definitely more acidity, slightly more body. There's a little more sharpness here. And just kind of thinking about what causes these differences. Well, the original pod uses less coffee. So there's only 5 grams of coffee in here versus the Vertuo has about 7 grams of coffee. So that probably explains some of the body differences. Also, I found the originals ground finer and brews hotter, which probably explains a little bit more of the bitterness too in it. You know, the Vertuo, we've already talked about how this tends to brew a little cooler on some prior videos. But it still does actually have a little more flavor in there, a little more richness to it. And I think there's something to it, just the higher amount of coffee, 7 grams versus 5 grams, but it also takes longer to brew. And I feel like this centrifusion process that the Vertuo machine does is a little bit more like an immersion brewing, like a French press, and that longer time with the coffee and the water, it just extracts a little more flavor, makes it a little more richer, and I tend to like the Vertuo taste a little bit more. Well, I think people who prefer like a traditional dark roasted coffee will like the originals, especially if you like smaller shots. Now, actually, taste is not the most important factor when choosing one of these machines. There's a lot more differences here. First off, the drink options are a lot different. The original only brews espresso. So you have 2 buttons for either a single or a double espresso, which is about 1.5 ounces versus close to 4 ounces on the double. There's also a ristretto option, but I've learned that the ristretto is nothing more than pushing the single button and then stopping it halfway for a smaller shot. So I guess you have only 3 options here, but they're all small coffees. Meanwhile, in the Vertuo, you have kind of 4 core drink sizes. The single espresso, the double espresso, then you also have a Grand Lungo, which is 5 ounces, and a coffee, which is more like 8 ounces. And then if you have a Vertuo Next or a Vertuo Pop, you actually have access to the 12-ounce Alto pod or the 18-ounce Carafe pod. Now, some history here in explaining the Vertuo is a newer line that was launched in 2014, and it was meant to appeal to the North American audiences who like bigger drinks. Based in the US, which is the land of the ventis, where a 12-ounce coffee is considered small. So I do like the coffee-sized pods on the Vertuo line here, and those are the most popular options. Now, another thing, though, is the pod availability. So you actually have a lot more availability on the original machine. So like I said, the Vertuo launched in 2014. It actually coincided with when the patents expired on the original machine. So that just led to almost any specialty roaster packaging their own pods and putting them out there, and it led to lower prices for pods. So the original pods are about 60 cents each versus about $1.10 on the Vertuo line. And over time, that'll probably save you about $180 at a coffee a day with the original machines. And you're going to get more availability with the original machines as well. So those are some big things to think about here when you're choosing these options. Now, I do also like the sheer simplicity of the Vertuo machine. You'll notice when you look at a pod on the bottom, there's a barcode. And when you put that in the machine, it just automatically reads it and the size of what size of coffee that is and what temperature to brew at, which I do appreciate, that just sheer simplicity of it. But the original is not that much harder, as you can see from our brewing. You could also save some money on the Vertuo pods if you just open and refill the pod with any coffee you use. I've actually done that, and I'll be making a video on it here on this channel, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. So overall, which do I prefer? Well, I'm loath to recommend an expensive option on this channel, but I go with the Vertuo machine. This is the Vertuo Plus, and I love it, and I just like there are more drink options here, and I tend to drink that 8-ounce coffee or double espresso with milk. I like that it's a richer taste and a fuller flavor, and so this is really my choice here. But I think the original is great if you are into just espressos or Americanos or more darker roasted coffee, as this is still a good option here. And by the way, I like both of these models, which is the Essenza Mini and the Vertuo Plus, which will be linked in the description below. If you have any more comments, let me know, and I'm happy to follow up. And if you enjoyed this video, hit like, as it really supports our channel.